as an aside, and this is really true, like I don't ever brush my hair, but yesterday I got it cut, so it was brushed for the first time in a year, just for you guys. I shouldn't tell you that. Oh, I'm Heather Givans, and you should know that my mother chose to, after my sister was born, to not have any more children. She chose that both mentally and had the procedure to not have children, and then I showed up 3.5 years later. So I've always had this sense that, like, and I feel like that my mother sort of pumped me full of this, you're destined for great things, like you're gonna be amazing. We never really wanted you, but like, we're glad you're ours. Like she kind of has that perspective. But then also one other thing that you need to know about my family is that I come from a very long line of conservative left-brainers. So me, as your local crafty girl, like I'm very right-brained, and you know, I can be mathematical, but I was definitely the odd man out. So my biggest challenge in life has been, I want to do everything. Like when I was little, I was totally going to be a linguist, and then I was going to be a doctor, and then of course like a truck driver, because who doesn't, as a little girl, want to be a truck driver? And then, you know, it keeps changing like all the time. I could never sort of pin myself down, and I can remember just feeling like desperate, like why can't I figure out like my life? You know, what should I be? So when I graduated from high school and I was accepted at Purdue University, I thought, I am so going there, because that is where smart people go and people are respected there. And because I grew up in Martinsville, Indiana, and so I was not going to go to IU because it was much too close to where I grew up. And of course, you know, as an 18-year-old, your perspective, just as Amanda said, is very skewed, right? It's just going to be a repeat of high school. I'm not going to IU. But as it turns out, so I was studying pre-med and decided to be that eccentric pre-med student who was studying French at the same time. And so, that was my major. But they kept telling me, you don't need science, like, as your major. You just have to pass that big fat test at the end. So I did that for about 2 years, and I was like, damn, this is a lot of work. Like, I'm not sure that I want to do this. And so I swiftly changed my major just in true form from French to Russian to German to a linguist to art history, and then just for fun, because nobody is a respected artist, I just took classes for fun. I took art classes for fun. And so as it turned out, then by the time I graduated, which I did in 4 years, I will have you know, after having changed my major about 15 times, I graduated in 4 years with a degree in art history, because that's respectable, right? And fine arts, so I have a degree in printmaking and illustration. So once I graduated, while I was in school, I had told myself, I took a few art education classes, but I thought all of those people were like total losers. And so, I know I'm so judgmental, I'm sorry. So I thought, those guys are not motivated, and like they're not smart. In my big scene, having grown up in a household of very like left brain, like we're Smarty McSmartersons, like we do math for fun. Like after growing up in that house, like I get into this community of like art education, and they're like, just paper mache. And I'm like, I can't be that person. So I swiftly dropped out of the art education program because I didn't respect my cohorts, which again is probably just a naive, like young person's like perspective, and very like ridiculous that I had that, those ideas. But after I graduated, then of course, I have a degree in art history and fine arts. What do I do now? Like I totally walked across the stage, and I'm like, oh my God. So I ended up working at Camp Tecumseh, which is a YMCA summer camp in Brookston, Indiana, and I loved it. Like I felt like, oh my God, I've found my kindred spirits. Like all these people who are sort of outdoorsy and a lot of fun, and everyone's like, bah, 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 like they're like hippy dippy sort of, and I'm like, I love these guys. And I worked there for 3 years, and in the course of doing that, at Camp Tecumseh, they have something called Quilt Camp. And so my mother revealed to me, oh Heather, it's been my 30-year dream to learn how to quilt. Will you please take me to quilt camp? And I'm like, I am an artist. I do not quilt. So, and then, but you should also know that I'm a dutiful daughter, and I said, fine, like, I will take you, and I'll just, like, make a bag or something, and you can totally quilt, and I will, it's fine. Well, of course, you know what happens when I show up. I fall in love with not only the old women that were there quilting with their endless sewing knowledge, but I fell in love with the process, a process that I never really considered as an art, which again, it goes right back to, I'm an idiot. So, I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing, because all of these women, like this tradition, and it was very much like they wanted to show me and like teach me, like this is how I do it. I can't get this to line up, but let me show you how to swamp the bottom. And I'm like, oh my God, it's amazing. So I learned how, do you swamp the bottom? See, you know what I'm talking about. And so I loved it, and I realized that actually the process of quilting is very much like printmaking. So if you are both a printmaker and a quilter, you will totally understand that statement, because it's very, very abstract until you get to the end, and then all of a sudden it like sort of hits you in the face. But what's also really cool about quilting is that it is so revered, especially for us in our culture, like, because it's something that was your grandmother's that she gives to you, and it's very sentimental, and it's a milestone art. And so I'm like, wow, like this, it's very impacting, and I never really thought, I never really considered it in that way. So after quilt camp, I signed up for about 15 more, like I do, right? And so then I go to quilt camp over and over and over, and I make a quilt for everyone I know. So I make one for, I must have made like 20 quilts, and I asked one of the women at camp, I'm like, how many quilts do you make in a year? And she's like, oh, I probably make about, I don't know, 4 or 5. I'm like, because I was making like 25. And I'm like, oh my God, okay, so, and you should also know that quilting is not a cheap sport. So, once you make 25 quilts and you're like, okay, I've got to get a real job, like I got to do something. So I went back to school and I finished my certificate to teach art, and I got a job teaching art. So I was teaching high school art and making these quilts and sewing on the side. And it's funny because as I pick all these quilts and I'm like, I have to do something with this because I can't afford to keep buying all this fabric and then like give it away. So I have a dear friend, Kristen Cohn, who owns Silver in the City, and she said, Heather, like if you want to sell your quilts here, that's fine, like you can totally sell your quilts. And so I did it, like, and I started selling them, and then thought, you know, this is kind of also wasteful at the same time. So once you cut down your quilt, you have all this extra scrap. And so I'm like, what can I make out of the scrap? So I started making all these little doodahs, like, you know, quilted cup holders and headbands and Indiana pillows, and I started making all these other like bits just from leftover fabrics and shredding all my fabrics and batting and stuffing stuff. So I was really trying to be green about it, like so I wouldn't have a lot of waste. And then all of a sudden, through the course of teaching, that kind of caught on. And I'm like, oh my God, like I've got 2 full-time jobs now. So I did that for about 3 years. Like I would literally go to school all day and love my kids, but then I sometimes would put them to work, but that, oh well, okay, so as the story goes, I was teaching in northern Minnesota, and I had a homeroom of 17 Swedish stock boys who I was supposed to mentor every day for 20 minutes. And they said to me, you're supposed to help these boys with their hopes and dreams. And I said, I know what a 17-year-old boy's hopes and dreams are, and I'm not willing to do that. And so I'm like, I don't ever want you guys to tell me anything. Like, I don't want to know anything. So I was making the Harriet headband, which I brought an example of here, which again, it originally started as just scrap from like my leftover quilting materials, but they helped me engineer a way in which to manufacture these in a very efficient and swift way. So we had a bracket system of how many could you turn inside out in 20 minutes, go. And so every day we would they would be working, these boys, these tall blonde boys were just, go, 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 and it's like we're doing all these races. Like, this is amazing, until halfway through the first semester, Michael Canoff says to me, "Miss Givans, what are you doing with all of these headbands?" And I'm like, "Don't worry about it, Michael, it's fine. Like, don't worry." But in fact, I'm like, "Okay, well, I'm selling them." But sometimes I like give money to charity. Like, that happens too. And he's like, "Absolutely not." And he went on strike. And he tried to put all the boys on strike. And then Amanda was like selling all of these headbands at Homespun. And I'm like, "You guys, I am dependent on you now. Like, how can we, I had to negotiate the terms with them." So the terms were once a month, they could take as many headbands as they wanted, which, you know, meant that every girl in school had a headband, which meant that I did indeed help them with their hopes and dreams. So my last year of teaching in northern Minnesota, my partner got a job here in Indianapolis, and I was like, if we are moving back to Indianapolis, I'm just going to do this, because I'm going to open a fabric store that has contemporary modern fabrics, because it just doesn't exist. Like, we've got really awesome quilt shops in Indianapolis, but no one really has, like, I don't walk into those other stores and completely find myself there. So I thought, well, either I can have a studio and sew all day, but then I don't have an opportunity to like meet new people and sort of synthesize information with them and build some kind of a community. So I'm just going to do it. Like, I don't really, I mean, I know a little bit about what I'm doing, but I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm just going to do this. And so I opened a year ago in August, and I started with about 25 bolts of fabric, and me going, "I promise it's going to get better. Like, I promise that we'll have more." And the first lady that walks through the door walks in and goes, "What do you think you're doing?" And I was like, I mean, I'm just trying to bring something new, like to Indianapolis or whatever. And she was like, "I love it. I'm going to tell all my friends." And so that's kind of been the sentiment of the people who come through the door. Like, I've not seen this before. Like, so women who are already quilters look at it and go, "I am amazed by this fabric. I don't even know what to do with it." But then I also get younger people who don't know how to sew and go, "Oh my God, I see myself in that. How can I do something? Like, how can I make something?" So now my job has become a synthesis of what I originally tried to avoid, was obviously art education. So I am now, like, I feel like my charge is not only to bring these fabrics to Indianapolis, but it does sound like death to me to own like a retail store. I'm still at that place in my career. Like, I don't want to be a retail, like, I don't want to do that. But what I really love about it is that I get to help other people sort of realize their potential in creating their own stories, which is exactly what quilting does. Is when you put those pieces together and you do it with intention, then it's pretty awesome, like, the outcome. So I love being able to share that with them. Now, a lot of people, and I wanted to share with you about the name Crimson Tate and where that came from. So that's my sewing pseudonym, and it was like when I needed to start my business, I had to call it something. So I called it Crimson Tate because it was after alizarin crimson, my favorite paint color, and I made all these illustrations when I was in college about Crimson Tate, a girl who took over the world. And it was named after alizarin crimson, my favorite paint color at the time, and then also the Tate Modern, which is the Modern Art Museum in London. So it was like a love, it was a nod to my love of both art and art history. And it may also have been my underage drinking name when I was 20. I will leave you with, because I think it's kind of poignant, it being today, like September 11th, is that one of my dear friends from camp, so those are some of my fondest days on this earth. Like, I feel really fortunate to have worked there. My friend Stacy is from Australia, and she actually was killed in the Bali bombings, and her philosophy on life always was, "We're here for a good time, not for a long time." And so every day, like when I'm in my store, like I feel like that's what I try to do. Like, I'm like, we're just here to do good work and like live with intention and have a good time and not worry about the rest. So, thanks.